The thing for us is it does not matter if 100,000 people click on a story or not. The thing that matters is our story is resonating with our audience who we have given this value proposition to, which is we're going to cover things with depth and context about local news that helps you make little d democratic decisions about who's running your town, who's building your sidewalks, who's running the schools. Because we've lost a lot of that sort of reporting. People are responding to us directly about that. And as a result, we can build a relationship with them.
That was Steve Cavendish, president and editor of the revived Nashville Banner, a local nonprofit, nonpartisan civic news organization. Steve calls the Banner a model for the future of local news, focusing on quality rather than scale, and providing in-depth and thoughtful content to engaged readers against the backdrop of a 24-hour digital news environment. Navigating an ever-changing media landscape is not without challenges. But as you'll hear in our conversation, Steve shares some of the successful strategies he's employed to produce meaningful, quality content, even with a small staff. Hi, friends. You're listening to Artisanal Insights, a podcast featuring real humans crafting real content right here in Middle Tennessee. My name is Carla Swank-Fox. I'm a content creator, college instructor, and community organizer. And for nearly a decade, I've helped lead Craft Content Nashville, a collective of digital creatives in the greater Nashville area. We're a homegrown community of content creators, marketers, educators, influencers, agency owners, entrepreneurs, and everything in between. Craft Content Nashville celebrates and elevates those among us who are doing innovative and inspiring work. If that sounds like you, please get involved and stay connected at craftcontentnashville.org. Steve Cavendish, welcome to Artisanal Insights.
It's good to be here. I'm glad to be here. Though it's like some combination of those two sentences is right. So this will be fun.
Excellent. So let's start with, anybody that might not be familiar with the news landscape, but what exactly is the Nashville Banner?
So the Nashville Banner is a nonprofit, nonpartisan news organization here in Nashville. My partner, Demetria Kaladimos, and I started talking about it about 4 years ago. Okay. And I had just left the scene. She had just left Channel 4. And we were kind of horrified at the dwindling level of resources in local news here in Nashville. And so we looked around at a lot of really different interesting things that were happening in the local news landscape. And the nonprofit model really appealed to us for 100 reasons. And we saw some really inspirational people doing really excellent work and building audience and having a lot of success. And so we decided to revive the Banner kind of as that.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of following the trajectory that you have gone through with that. And being a former journalist, I follow these things really closely, right? But I know that not everybody is as high level of a nerd as I am, right? And so as I was going through and looking at your website, and I saw on your mission statement, you had the Banner as a direct response to the decline of public service journalism in Tennessee. So here's that huge can of worms kind of question. What do you mean by that?
So what I would say is that for a long time when you had big newsrooms, and when I say big newsrooms, I'm usually speaking about newspaper newsrooms because that's what I came out of. That's what I worked in my entire career. These big newsrooms did the accountability work, did the investigative work, did the really sort of digging in beat level work on, civic institutions that affect our lives. And they did a lot of other things too. I mean, there's a reason why the newspaper comes in 4 or 5 sections. It's because different people have different interests. Some people grab the sports section. Some people are grabbing business, or some people are grabbing features or the main section. And so that's always how it's been. When those things have been rolled up into these big sites now that a lot of the for-profit chains have, and then those chains have cut their resources, typically what's been cut is a lot of this sort of accountability level work. And if you were building a site from the ground up, you would never look at some of these Gannett sites or some of these Newhouse sites or some of these, pick your big chain, like some of the McClatchy sites, and go, oh, I'm going to do it exactly like that. You would build around specific audience or specific topics or any number of different things. And so we decided to build around this idea about civic journalism. And we have lost so much, means that when we're putting resources back in here, we can have a real impact.
Right.
We've got a dedicated criminal justice reporter and a dedicated courts reporter who are doing work that nobody else is doing right now. People may cover like individual cases or drop in on high profile kind of trials and things like that. But, we've been doing a vein of reporting around accountability and secrecy in the criminal court system that nobody's writing about. And these are things that affect the public's ability to know what happens in their courts. And we think it's really important. And the really amazing thing of it is the more of that work that we do, the more response we get from the public. And that part of it's been really nice.
Yeah, you touched on something there that got the outside of journalism. Let's expand the conversation a little bit, the idea of understanding your audience, right? And how does having a local newsroom and understanding that audience, how does that impact the way that you do things?
I don't think you can talk about the nonprofit model separately. I think they're inextricably intertwined. What we often talk about, I talk about this with our staff, and we talk about this with donors, is that the incentive structures around this are so much more aligned for quality than they are on the for-profit side. The thing for us is it does not matter if 100,000 people click on a story or not. The thing that matters is our story is resonating with our audience who we have given this value proposition to, which is we're going to cover things with depth and context about local news that helps you make little d democratic decisions about who's running your town, who's building your sidewalks, who's running the schools. Because we've lost a lot of that sort of reporting. People are responding to us directly about that. And as a result, we can build a relationship with them. And it directly ties into the financial model because we're a membership organization. All of our content is free. There is no paywall. We are rewarded by people finding our content important enough to support. That's an incredible incentive.
Yeah.
The incentives for us are around quality, not scale. And if we have the ability to do anything, we're going to lean more into sort of accountability journalism and things that people have told us they find real value in.
Yeah. I want to dive in a little bit more with the whole nonprofit thing, because as someone who came out of the news industry, that was a buzzword, 10, 15 years ago, the idea of moving newsrooms to nonprofit. How does that actually play out in reality for you all? That you're finding success with it so far. Is it terrifying every day to kind of go in and realize?
So I'm the editor. I'm also the president, which means I'm over the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. I look at our donor base. I know how much money we have to raise. I know what we have to do in order to survive. And that'll keep you up at night. But at the same time, we're journalists. We care about where we are. We want to do news where we are. How do we do that? And for us, it's been teaching ourselves that side of the business. And it's not without its problems and not without its bumps. But at the same time, we have gotten into it because there was this void and nobody else was doing it. And so Demetria and I kind of raised our hands and said, okay, we'll do it.
Yeah.
In every major market around the country, you've seen nonprofit news kind of rising up. And there's a lot, and that's where all the growth has been. And I think that's for a number of reasons. One is the incentives align, like I said. You're rewarded for quality. But the other piece of it is the business model is so broken on the for-profit side that I don't think you can do it successfully. And I just think that it is no accident that the only growth in Nashville in terms of newsrooms over the last 10 years has been WPLN, which is a nonprofit. But I think that the future of local news, because you cannot build something at the local level that exists on scale, is going to be more successful on the nonprofit side.
Yeah, that's interesting. What you're doing is relatively unique. It's unique here in Nashville, other than, as you mentioned, WPLN. But I think it's really interesting, and I've been wanting to ask you this question since the Banner launched, was the idea of using the name The Banner, right? Because what you're doing is something new, yet you took a legacy name. For people that aren't aware, Banner was in Nashville for a long time.
It was the afternoon newspaper. It was the paper I got my start at. I graduated from Belmont on a Saturday and was working full time at the Banner on a Monday. So there's a sentimental piece of it, but the truth of it is, it got us out of a brand ID problem, because anybody who is older than 30 or 35, if you say Nashville Banner, they know it means newspaper, or they know at least it means news. And if we had launched as the Nashville Bugle, we would be spending, all of our time trying to get people to understand exactly what we did. So it probably gave us a 9 months to 1 year advantage in terms of recognition. We still have to answer the question, oh, the Banner's back kind of thing, but it got us out of that very basic brand ID problem. And that part of it has been successful. It's nice. And we've done some fun stuff with it on kind of a branding perspective. We took the old eagle, which was metal and part of the original nameplates, and we had it redrawn by a guy who up in Bristol who does the Burt's Bees illustrations.
Yeah.
Because we wanted that look. So he did it, but he did it as a woodcut and then digitized it for us. So it has that kind of look of like being the old metal emblem that's atop a newspaper. But we flipped the orientation of the eagle's head, and we put some Easter eggs in the illustration, and it's been a lot of fun.
Interesting. So there's everybody's homework assignment is to go look for Easter eggs in the eagle and in the masthead. What does a day in content look like for you in a digital publication?
So it varies. What we try to say is, okay, we're going to give you one or two things every single day that help you. Sometimes, we have a very small staff. So we have 5 reporters, myself and Demetria. We have a news editor, a web producer. We have a senior producer who does a lot of audio stuff, and a full-time photographer. It's just not a lot of people. And so particularly if you're doing the kind of work that you're doing, it means that we're not going to be cranking out 10 stories a day. So they need to hit. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I always tell people, and I think this is really important to understand, is that when you put together a staff, you're not buying people, you're buying time. And what you need to understand too is you're buying the time to not publish. And this is very, very important, because you see and broadcast is the worst kind of example of this. Send your people out into the field and you'd be like, okay, you got to come back with a 1.5-minute story, no matter what, even if the thing that you didn't pan out. And so you see a lot of junky stories that were we thought the story was going to be this, and then it turned out to be this. And so this is not really news, but hey, we have to fill the air. And, the best staffs are adept at kind of navigating that and knowing kind of what to do. But I'm thinking about a story that we published this week that is in line with kind of a lot of the courts accountability stuff that we've been writing. We had that story in some form last week, but didn't have it. If it's not ready for the public, and if you don't have it nailed down exactly like you need to, and you don't have all of the facts that you need for the story to be relevant, you can't publish. And so we're not publishing a ton of content every single day, because a lot of times our reporters are taking several days to write a story, because that's what it takes to do it right. And, we spend a lot of our time messaging out to members exactly what it takes to produce the work that we want to do. And in this day and age, you have to do a lot of educational work with any audience about the costs. Just because it's coming to you for free doesn't mean that it was free to produce. And also kind of the time that it takes in order to do it. And so we're going to build up to producing a lot more content. But, right now we're trying to hit a few stories a day. The big thing for us is we put a lot into our morning newsletter. It's not just kind of a link dump. You'll see this in a lot of publications. They'll be like, here's links to everything you didn't read on the site yesterday.
Yeah.
And we spend, the top part of the newsletter kind of telling people about the stories that we've been working on. But there is original reporting that goes into that newsletter that doesn't exist anywhere else. And I think that part of the problem that we have in the digital age is that we have adapted so much towards speed that quality gets sacrificed.
A lot of thinking about news cycles right now, right? And just how fast it is. And I think that's a really interesting take on, even though you're a digital publication, right, slowing down and taking, because we've gotten used to digital publications. We want things immediately. We want things on social media the minute it happens. And to actually take the time and say, no, you know what, we're going to do this and actually get the story. You're right. That takes a lot of education of an audience that has now been trained with the push notifications and the social media platforms and all those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've all seen the reports about next generation and news and where, you know, your Gen Zs, or even now you're starting to get into Gen Alpha, where they're finding their news. It's on social platforms, mm-hmm. right? How does that influence the way that you maybe try to gain more awareness about the brand, about the paper? I said paper. You're not a paper. You're a digital publication. See, I went back to legacy mode there. But yeah, just the idea of getting better, you know, reach really with a younger audience, because they're the ones that are going to have to keep funding you to keep you afloat down the line. Eventually they will.
So what I would say is we're somewhat invested in social media. I spend way too much time on Twitter. That is a personal failing of my own. The publication is on Twitter. We spend a lot more time on Instagram with news than we do even on Twitter. And it helps that we have somebody like Demetria, who's super smart about video, to do stuff. Like when Diane Nash, when they dedicated the plaza to her here a couple months ago up at the courthouse, she found this old news footage about Nash and confronting the mayor on the courthouse steps, and like did this like 2-minute video, but like really kind of put it in context for people for that weekend. And we put that out like the Friday before, and it did great. And it did great on Instagram. And, you know, we'll find those opportunities where we can and kind of, you know, let people know that we're out there. My feeling has always been that if you're publishing and you're publishing on a platform, then you have to do it well, no matter what it is. And so if we choose to publish on Instagram or Twitter or, you know, on a website, like, or in a newsletter, like how are we doing it so that that's like the best version of what we can do? Because I think people notice when you don't do it well. And so that's what we say is when we try to do something, we try to do it as the best we possibly can, or we don't do it.
Yeah.
I would say we've hired an experienced staff for the most part. We have a couple of younger staff members, but we've hired people that know Nashville. And then you put in like Demetria, who was in everybody's living room for 30 plus years at Channel 4, and who, by the way, is like one of the best reporters you'll ever meet. It gives us the ability to do some things. Yeah.
You have some pretty well-known names on your staff, right? Between, obviously, we've talked about Demetria, but I mean, Stephen Hale, well-known for his reporting.
Stephen Hale's a good example.
Yeah.
Stephen Hale just wrote a fantastic book. I feel like I'm his book agent here a little bit. He wrote this fantastic book called Death Row Welcomes You that was inside, you know, Tennessee's death row. And like to have that guy covering criminal justice for us is just such a privilege. But I mean, like Stephen Elliott. Stephen Elliott was the editor of most recently of the Nashville Post. He knows Metro really well. And to have him covering Metro for us is fantastic.
Well, and it adds credibility immediately.
Yeah.
To what you're trying to build, too, to be able to have those kinds of names there. Yeah. How did you convince them to come to a nonprofit newsroom?
The secret is, I'm not going to give you any numbers, but I mean, we pay decently.
Yeah.
One of the things that you have seen, and one of the reasons why the turnover has accelerated so heavily in a lot of for-profit newsrooms, is because they have actively pushed down wages here over the years. The Tennessean used to be a great destination paper for mid-career professional journalists.
Yeah.
And now what you see is, you know, they have a tendency to hire young. They've hired well. They've had some really good people come through there. And as much as I criticize the Tennessean, I'm really kind of criticizing Gannett, because there's some really good people over at the Tennessean and they do some really good work. They have people leaving far faster than they should. A lot of that has to do with pay. So we pay decently. It is 85% of our total budget, I think, is paying people. Because if you get people with experience, you can create a market advantage by having their talent. And we've been very deliberate about that. We've been lucky that we've been able to pull from some really experienced folks here, but we've got some inexperienced folks here. Like the guy who's covering courts for us right now and is doing a great job was our intern last summer, but came in and we did kind of a proof of concept summer where we just covered local elections and wanted to see kind of like what the reaction was to it. If like, okay, if we treat the mayor's race like the presidential race, what will people react? And turns out they did.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of credit for it. But one of the reasons why we were so successful was this intern that I'd found out of Belmont who did that thing where they worked so hard and did so much stuff that they kind of became indispensable. And so, that's how we got Connor.
That's how a lot of young journalists got their start back in the day, was just make yourself indispensable in those kinds of ways to convince them to hire them on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Normally I would ask something like, what's the end game, that kind of thing with all of this.
God, I hope there's not one.
But okay, it's the news industry, right? Like that's not a fair question. So what are the goals for the Banner for the next, let's say 2 years? I think that's probably as far as we can telegraph out at this point.
The goals for us are to build audience and continue building audience. For people that spend time kind of in the digital publication world, you talk about the funnel and kind of getting people into the funnel and then kind of converting them into supporters, and that's true for us as well. We need to widen the funnel as much as we possibly can, and we'll do that kind of in smart ways. I think the way things have changed is that we rely on some things on the technology side or kind of on the consulting side that have helped us be really robust out of the gate with kind of building membership and with having the technology to have a robust website. We use Newspack, which is a CMS that it's Automatic, which is the WordPress people.
Yeah.
They've given us a lot of tools that we can kind of punch above our weight for what we normally do, and also kind of save us on a web developer position because they do a lot of the support kind of in-house. That's good for us in this size right now.
Yeah.
If we add 5 more people, 4 of them will be journalists, either reporters or editors of some stripe. I think that's going to continue to kind of be the way we grow here in the near term. We would like to do a lot more. We're going to apply in this next round of Report for America to be able to kind of lean on those resources. We want to grow as fast as possible because what we have heard from our readers and members is they want us to do more. And so we're going to try every way we can to do more. Yeah. And that's really kind of like what the next 2 years looks like. We still have money to raise. We raised about $2 million in order to kind of get us started and through the first year. We're in the middle of raising another $1 million in order to kind of get us through next year as we build the kind of the recurring revenue piece of it. And to get to sustainability, we're doing things that on the for-profit side, they've done forever. Mm-hmm. They'll go out and have a big raise either from venture capital or from ownership or something who puts down the money until you achieve profitability. I mean, we're doing the same thing. We've gone to donors and we give them something in return, which is a tax write-off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's it. And then that buys us the time to get to sustainability.
Besides making donations, obviously, are there other ways that the Nashville digital creative community can support the work that you're doing?
So there are a couple of different revenue streams that we have. Membership, obviously. You can be a major donor to us too. We will absolutely take your check. We also have different levels of sponsorship. It is what the ad business is.
Right.
But it's also that's like 10 to 12% of our pro forma. It's not 30 to 40% like what you used to find on the newspaper side, or in the newspaper side, 50 to 60%.
Right.
Those are sort of the main streams of it. We're doing some grant writing. We've had some foundations that have been extremely supportive of us so far, and we hope to have more. But that's really sort of the biggest sort of piece of it. We'd like to do a lot more around creation and in terms of audio and video. We have some exceptionally talented people on staff on the audio side. Our news editors, Andrea Tudhope, who created This Is Nashville for WPLN, and Steve Harouche, who is fabulous, and I used to work with at the scene, is just I mean, both of them are just amazing. And then Demetria has been kind of really aggressive in both producing her own video, but I think we are also starting to look at other people's video and kind of like, how can we do some work with others that's not just our own? So, I mean, there might be some partnerships or some kind of pieces in there, particularly around video creators.
Cool. Let me shift gears and give you the Artisanal Insights questionnaire. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's talk about Nashville. Who's a local creator we should all be following?
Local creator you should all be following. Define what you mean by creator.
Well, the craft content community would define it as anybody posting digital content online. So podcasters, social media, bloggers, writers.
I'm going to go sports with this.
Okay.
I'm a little biased in this, in that he and I do a podcast together called Lamestream Sports that I do on the side. Still, we've been doing it for about 3+ years. I mean, go listen to us, but that's not who I'm pimping here. Braden Gall, and particularly if you're a hockey fan, I think some of the best content around the Preds is coming out of Braden and his group, and this new initiative that they've launched, and they have some other people that they're bringing in here in the next couple of months, which I think Nashville hockey fans are going to be really excited about. And then there's another guy here in town named Stephen Godfrey, and Godfrey is on a podcast called Split Zone Duo that I think is like one of the best college football podcasts that anywhere. They do really creative stuff. They're very funny. They're not like comically funny. They're just kind of like funny on their own.
Right.
And they do some of my favorite things around college football. And I'm a big college football fan.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know how many people realize that Godfrey lives here in Nashville. But he's a local guy. So.
He's a local. Well, I mean,
now he is.
Now he is. And he's really, really good.
Yeah.
But all three of those guys are.
For the record, I did not pay Steve to say that, by the way, those things. But I already follow all of those people. Yeah. Okay. Second question. What's a hidden gem in Nashville or Middle Tennessee that we use locals here loosely, but those of us who live here, that we tend to take for granted?
I think one of the best old school burgers in town is still Gabby's. Gabby's burgers are fantastic, and their fries are so good, and I have to take a nap after every time I go to Gabby's. So go to Gabby's.
To Gabby's.
It's still great. It never stopped being great.
Yeah. No, I agree there. And yes, I have to take a nap every time I go there too. Okay, last one. Favorite coffee order in Nashville?
Favorite coffee order? Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a really bland coffee order. I drink more tea than I do coffee.
Okay.
But like my coffee order is just a latte.
Okay.
Just a whole milk latte. And it's the most boring answer in the world. I mean, it's like...
Who makes the best one in Nashville? If you had to go somewhere right now to go get a latte, where would you go?
I mean, Nashville has turned into such a good coffee town.
Yes.
I got to say Crema. I mean, while we're here in the summer, Crema does this thing. They do a coffee soda in the summertime, and it has like this kind of like orange tinge to it. It's like this iced coffee soda. This should actually be my answer because it's so much better than a latte. But like in the summertime, that thing is so freaking good. Oh my God, it is so good. And I'd never had it before, and someone on our staff turned me onto it, and I was like, And I've had more of those this summer than probably is healthy for me to have.
Yeah.
But it's so good. It's a summertime only thing. So if you're here and you're listening in Nashville, go to Crema and try this coffee soda. It's otherworldly good.
Fantastic. Where can people follow you?
You can follow me at Cavendish on all the socials, whatever they're calling Twitter these days, or Instagram. I spend more time on Blue Sky these days, and I would encourage almost anybody to go spend some time on Blue Sky as opposed to Twitter. End your unhealthy relationship with Twitter. I'm trying to very unsuccessfully, but that's definitely something you should do.
College football season is going to do that to us again too.
I mean, that's the thing is like the second screen experience.
Yes.
For on sports days.
Yep.
Like I'm like U.S. World Cup. I'm a huge soccer fan. U.S. World Cup days. You can't beat what's going on, and kind of like people like instantly posting clips and all kinds of funny stuff, funny reactions, and people pulling screenshots of weird stuff that's happening in the stands.
Yeah.
You kind of can't beat it.
Right.
it's just such a sewer otherwise.
I hear that. And also go support the Nashville Banner wherever you follow them, and their website's
nashvillebanner.com. Come give us your email. We'll appear in your inbox once in the morning, and that's it, unless some massive news breaks, that we'll send you another one, but we're not going to flood you out.
That sounds great. Steve, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Get involved and stay connected with our creative community at craftcontentnashville.org. You can join our conversations on Instagram, Threads, and LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe or follow, rate and review, and, of course, share Artisanal Insights wherever you get your audio content. Now go forth and craft content. We'll talk with you again soon.